Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you to all of the team members here from across city departments and especially all of BPS's departments as we are sharing some information and continuing to get ready for the start of school in just a few days. 4 months ago, our city suffered an unimaginable tragedy. We lost a beautiful little boy after he was hit by his school bus on the way home from kindergarten. Lenz Joseph was just 5 years old, full of joy, full of love, and he made everyone around him smile, from his neighbors, his classmates, his teachers, and of course, his beloved family. Lenz was supposed to grow up in Boston and graduate and live a full life and give back to the city. On behalf of the entire city, I want to express my profound and deep sadness and condolences as we continue to hold the Joseph family in our hearts and all those who loved and continue to love Lenz. There are no words that can capture the pain of losing a child. As a mom, I am devastated that this happened, and as mayor, I take seriously my responsibility and our collective charge to ensure that this never happens again. The City of Boston will do everything in our power to make sure that every child is safe in our city, and that every Boston family is confident that their children will be safe at school and on the way to and from school. We will do everything we can to make sure this never happens again. We're making real changes to improve our system, and we're going to ensure that the accountability mechanisms are in place to monitor them. That's why Superintendent Skipper and I asked Attorney Natasha Tidwell, a former police officer and federal prosecutor, to lead an independent review of our school bus vendor, Transdev, for their safety policies and performance. I want to note that there is a separate review of the specific incident and events of April 28th led by the Suffolk County District Attorney, and that review is ongoing. However, our own review and our understanding of the facts as they have emerged make it clear that the driver involved on April 28th should not have been on the road that day. And we know this is important to the Joseph family and to all of our families, that the safety of all 20,000 of our bus riders in the Boston Public Schools is first and foremost, and that the systems, the procedures, and the accountability mechanisms are in place to ensure that every single driver is trained, credentialed, properly certified, and is ready to be on the road to protect that the most precious cargo that there is. I want to thank Attorney Tidwell and her team for their diligent work over these past 3 months and share that today we are releasing this report to the public. The City and Boston Public Schools have reviewed the final report, and we will be adopting all of the report's recommendations to strengthen our system for the future. That means building on the work we've already done to increase our day-to-day oversight of the Transdev contract, including more paper audits and reviews of driver files and credentials at unannounced visits to the bus yards. It means holding Transdev accountable for ensuring that every driver has up-to-date credentials at all times. It means increasing the number of full-time school bus trainers by nearly 40%. To expand and accelerate training, that team has grown from 11 to 15 full-time trainers this summer, and we will be maintaining that higher level moving forward. We're also going to work with Transdev and our bus drivers union to consider safety reforms that need to be included in the bus driver contract. And we're going to hold Transdev accountable for executing on these recommendations as well. I want to thank the Boston City Council, represented here by the Education Committee Chair, Councilor Henry Santana, for holding a hearing on this report and on the information that has been shared later today. And I want to thank all those on this team who have worked so hard to understand what happened, to share and provide information so that this report could be thorough and who are putting in place the changes across our transportation system, but every part of our system to ensure that Boston Public Schools is the best possible nurturing environment for each and every one of our students. I'm grateful for the partnership of our superintendent, for the leadership of our school committee chair, Chair Jerry Robinson, and all of our school committee members, and all of the leaders from BPS and from our city who are gathered here today. School starts a week from today, but most of all, they're counting on us to ensure that their children are safe. That is our highest charge and our most serious responsibility. So today, we honor Lenz's memory by reflecting on what's been learned and committing to action. I'm grateful to all of our colleagues here for their work to move us forward, and I know it is extremely important to the Joseph family that not only will there be justice done in this case, but that moving forward, this report is only the starting point for continued changes that will make our city and our students safer every day. Superintendent Mary Skipper will say a few words in just a moment, but I want to make sure that our families who speak Spanish get some of the information directly as well. Buenos días. Hace 4 meses, nuestra ciudad sufrió una tragedia inimaginable. Perdimos a un niño después de que fuera atropellado por su autobús escolar de camino a su casa. Lenz Joseph tenía solo 5 años, lleno de valor, lleno de alegría. Hacía sonreír a todos a su alrededor, desde vecinos hasta profesores y compañeros de clase, especialmente su familia. Se suponía que Lenz iba a ser criado en Boston y se graduará y viviría una vida plena. En nombre de toda la ciudad, quiero expresar mis profundas condolencias a la familia de Lenz, a sus amigos y todos los que lo amaban. Tuve la oportunidad de sentarme con la comunidad a principios de esta semana y hace muchos meses. Ningún padre debería tener que pasar por lo que está lidiando. La ciudad hará todo lo que esté a nuestro alcance para asegurarse de que todos los padres de Boston estén seguros de que sus hijos estarán seguros en la escuela. Vamos a hacer todo lo posible para asegurarnos de que esto nunca vuelva a suceder. Vamos a hacer cambios reales para mejorar nuestro sistema. Es por eso que la superintendenta y yo le pedimos a la abogada Natasha Tidwell, exoficial de la Policía y Fiscal Federal, que dirigiera una investigación independiente de nuestro proveedor de autobuses escolares, las políticas de seguridad y el desempeño de TransDev. La ciudad y nuestro sistema de escuelas públicas han revisado el informe final y adoptaremos todas las recomendaciones del informe para fortalecer nuestro sistema para el futuro. Eso significa, basándonos en el trabajo que ya hemos hecho para aumentar nuestra supervisión diaria del contrato de TransDev, incluyendo más auditorías en papel y revisiones de archivos de conductores y credenciales en visitas no anunciadas a los patios de autobuses. Responsabilizar a TransDev por garantizar que cada conductor tenga credenciales actualizadas en todo momento. Aumentar el número de entrenadores de autobuses escolares a tiempo completo en casi un 40%. Para ampliar y acelerar la capacitación, aumentamos nuestro equipo a más entrenadores a tiempo completo este verano y mantendremos un nivel más alto superior en el futuro. También vamos a trabajar con TransDev y nuestro sindicato de conductores de autobuses para considerar las reformas de seguridad de nuestro contrato de conductor de autobús. Y también vamos a responsabilizar a TransDev por ejecutar estas recomendaciones. La escuela comienza dentro de una semana. A medida de que los estudiantes regresan, tenemos miles de familias que confían en nosotros. Así que hoy honramos la memoria de Lenz, reflexionando sobre lo que se ha aprendido y comprometiéndonos con la acción. Estoy agradecido a mis colegas de las escuelas y la ciudad por su trabajo para hacernos avanzar. And now I'll pass it on to Superintendent Mary Skipper.
Good morning, and thank you all for being here. Each day, more than 20,000 students in Boston start their day on the school bus, and they end their day on the school bus. These students rely on our buses to get to school on time, to get to the classes on time, to eat their breakfast, to attend their after school and their enrichment and field trips. And it's our responsibility to ensure that the bus transportation is reliable and it's on time, and most importantly, it's safe. Last April, the worst possible unimaginable thing happened on the 28th when we lost a student, Lenz Joseph, to a tragic accident on the bus. Lenz Joseph was a bright, caring kindergartner who, from all accounts, just made life better for his friends, for his family, for his teachers. We continued to mourn his death with the Joseph family and keeping them in our prayers and our thoughts. I know that the loss of Lenz will impact me, it will impact our team and our city forever. Our whole team, especially our transportation team, was devastated by that accident. Just days after Lenz's tragic death, our team took several immediate steps. BPS Transportation and TransDev Safety Leadership added a daily meeting to collectively review all accidents or safety incidences from the prior day and the follow-up steps that were taken. BPS Transportation Leadership began attending the Accident Review Committee, which is a process detailed in the CBA of the Bus Drivers Union, as observers. And our transportation leadership team also worked with TransDev on additional measures to accelerate refresher training for all Boston school bus drivers, including a new professional operator development program called PODP, which was created by TransDev to supplement required training for bus school drivers. PODP is now fully implemented across the Boston operation. All Boston school bus drivers are fully credentialed and have received all required training to be driving a school bus in Massachusetts. TransDev also brought their corporate safety leadership along with additional driver trainers to work on-site in Boston throughout the summer. This has allowed us to accelerate the rollout of the PODP so that all Boston school drivers have received it. BPS is committed to working with TransDev to maintain these higher staffing levels going forward beyond the summer. I want to thank our Executive Director of Transportation, Dan Rosengard, and his team for swiftly taking all the appropriate steps in their continued commitment to ensuring that student safety is the priority and for driving consistent, sustained improvements of our overall transportation system. A bit on the report. So first, I want to express my gratitude to Attorney Tidwell and to her team for their independent review of transportation safety policies and performance under BPS's bus vendor contract with TransDev. We're especially grateful to her for performing this review as quickly as she did and her team so that we and the public could have all necessary results before the start of the school year. The mayor and I requested this independent review to ensure that we are taking every measurable possible to have the safest experience for our students on our school buses. We're committed to learn from the report and to decisively implement the recommendations so that we ensure our transportation is as safe as possible while we await the district attorney's investigation conclusions from the April 28th incident. In a number of ways, the report affirms the work that's been going on for the past 2 years under the contract with TransDev and all the additional steps that we've taken this summer. The bus vendor contract with Transdev that took effect on July 1st, 2023, introduced meaningful performance incentives and financial penalties for non-performance that did not exist in the prior contract, along with extensive reporting requirements and oversight mechanisms. BPS Transportation has been actively managing Transdev, engaging in oversight on a daily basis, monitoring performance across all aspects of the operation, and consistently pushing for contract compliance over the past 2 years. All of these things are leading to meaningful, sustained improvements in on-time performance and operations that have benefited our students. In terms of the recommendations, so the report makes many clear and helpful recommendations throughout that we intend to adopt and implement fully, but I wanted to highlight a few of the main ones. First, the report highlighted the urgent need for Transdev to develop a more centralized system for maintaining driver files. In our own work with Transdev, we have also observed that need for change. This summer, Transdev's already begun taking steps to implement that recommendation, and will work with Transdev to make it easier to update driver files and increase our ongoing auditing to ensure compliance. Secondly, the report calls for Transdev to conduct additional audits of driver safety, licensing, and compliance, and calls on us in the BPS to bolster our existing structures with increased oversight and auditing of Transdev licensing and compliance features. This work has already begun, and it will continue and ramp. In the immediate aftermath of the April 28th accident, Transdev conducted an audit of all drivers and confirmed that all drivers on the road had valid and up-to-date licenses and certifications. Transdev and BPS have also taken the additional steps this summer to ensure all drivers have valid certifications prior to the start of the school year. Transdev has required all drivers to bring in their hard copy of their credentials for the start of the year as an additional check. And to be clear, no driver will be allowed to drive this school year until they fulfill that requirement, even if Transdev already has a copy of their valid credentials on file. Additionally, BPS is requiring Transdev to provide a full, updated roster with each driver's credentials prior to the start of the school year. This is on top of the full driver roster that we get of credentials in April. That's an annual drop. Transdev, this will really allow us to conduct more checks, additional audits throughout the year. BPS will also continue to audit Transdev's licensing and compliance functions going forward, including with increased auditing of driver files and credentials during our frequent unannounced visits to the bus yards. Thirdly, the report also calls for an increase in safety trainers. With the beginning of this contract, BPS more than doubled the number of safety trainers our bus vendor is required to maintain relative to staffing levels from prior years and prior vendors. This summer, we have further increased that number of safety trainers from 11 to 15, thanks to Transdev bringing in additional trainers to Boston. We intend to work with Transdev to maintain that new staffing level, and will closely study whether there needs to be any further staffing increases and if they're warranted. And then finally, the report also highlighted some important pieces that we need to solve in the long term. For example, we appreciate the report's insights around areas in which long-standing provisions, some dating back decades, in the contractual bargaining agreement, or what we call the CBA, between Transdev and the bus drivers. Some of these present barriers to Transdev's ability to implement all of the safety protocols that they would like. BPS is committed to closely reviewing the recommendations around how the CBA could be amended to improve student safety, and we're committed to engage with Transdev and the Bus Drivers Union to act on those recommendations. Additionally, as recommended, we will push Transdev to move on a real-time, online record-keeping system, specifically around licenses. We see this as important and something that we will work with them to implement, while ensuring driver files continue to be maintained in a manner consistent with all federal regulations. We appreciate Transdev's partnership in the work, the improvements that have been made over the past 3 years, the actions that have been taken over the past several months following the accident, and their commitment based on the recommendations of this report to ensure our transportation operation is as safe as possible. So in closing, I'd just like to thank, again, Attorney Tidwell and her team. As the mayor said, we start school back in a week, and I just want to reassure our families that children's safety is our highest priority in all areas: transportation, food, facilities, teaching and learning, every single area. Child safety is our priority. And we are committed with this report and anything further that we learn from the DA's report to make sure that our students get to and from school safely every day. Thank you. And I think question and answers.
What recourse does the city have to make sure that Transdev is kind of holding up its end of the bargain as it pertains to the contract? And are they, because of these recommendations not being implemented in the original contract, is the city able to implement these changes meaningfully without, it's been 2 years since that contract was negotiated?
So everything that that we have seen with Transdev is a willingness to implement the recommendations from the report, and there has been, since the first 2013 to now the second contract in 2023, there's been continual improvement and partnership with Transdev at all areas to really try to have the strongest systems and safety possible. I think the report, in a very helpful way, calls out very specific areas, particularly in safety and compliance around the licensing and the training, that Transdev is being cooperative with us and suggesting at every step that they are willing to do with us.
Just a quick follow-up to that. So you mentioned also the CBA with the bus drivers. Is that the primary pushback, if you will, on implementing any of these safety measures, and what specifically are they kind of pushing back on, for lack of better words?
So I think the CBA is a factor, but it is not the only factor that's listed in the report. There's many recommendations that we have the ability to be able to move forward with. I think on the CBA, it's something that we believe in good collaboration with the bus driver union and with Transdev. Now that these areas have been highlighted, we'll work very hard before the negotiation for the next contract to see that we can come to agreement and be able to implement them.
Mayor, when you said in your remarks that the report showed the driver involved should not have been on the road that day, I haven't had a chance to digest the report yet, so can you just speak about what in the report will do that?
Yeah, so the report itself isn't about the specific incident on April 28th. What I meant was that as the facts have come out in our, I'm using the word review in many different ways. This is a review by Attorney Tidwell with interviews and deep dives from Transdev, from BPS, from those who have been involved in building the systems and looking back at previous contractual language. BPS obviously also did an immediate review and audit alongside Transdev of what the specific driver's record had looked like, other incidents that were on that driver's driving history, and what emerged in the facts that came out was that although so every driver has a number of certifications they need to be officially qualified to drive a school bus in Massachusetts, a certain type of driver's license plus an additional school bus certificate certification, and that requires a certain number of hours of training to be able to apply for and to receive. The driver had the other licenses and had completed the required training hours and the required trainings, but had not filled out the paperwork to receive the certification. And so his school bus certification had expired that day, which means he should not have been on the road, even if he had the training hours that were required. Did I get that right, Dan?
Okay. A follow-up, because you mentioned the separate review by the Suffolk County DA going on right now. And then I know the term, like when the DA releases its report was used. Is the DA looking into criminal charges? I mean, that's what that review is, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know the exact format of what will come of that. If it is, my understanding is that it may not be a written document necessarily, but they are the district attorney's office alongside the Boston Police, sharing all the information that they have, and going into vehicle reconstruction and all of the details of what took place on that day. They are looking into what accountability would look like on that front.
Apart from the certification issues with this particular driver, what did you discover about his prior driving record that you were not aware of prior? And was there a prior driving record that had issues that concerned you?
Do you want to share anything, Tim?
Hi, everyone. Dan Rosengard, Executive Director of BPS Transportation. So what we know about the driver and his prior driving record is that the driver had been involved in 4 minor accidents over the course of his time working with TransDev in Boston, which was about a 2-year period. Of those 4 accidents, 2 of them were deemed preventable and 2 of them were deemed non-preventable. He completed the required post-accident retraining for each of those accidents and was back on the road. And we await the findings of the district attorney's investigation into any additional findings coming out of April 28th.
So those prior incidents didn't disqualify him from continuing to be a driver?
No.
And you said, someone said earlier that the entire driving force has been reviewed in terms of being up to date with credentials and whatnot. Of the 700 plus other drivers that were reviewed since this incident, how many of them have been removed from the workforce?
So TransDev conducted an immediate post-April 28th audit of all driver licenses and credentials and confirmed that all drivers on the road had valid and up-to-date licenses and credentials. We have more than 750 active drivers in our workforce and more than 800 total drivers, including drivers who are on leave. So at any given time, there are a number of drivers entering and exiting the workforce through retirements, resignations, as well as terminations and new hires. So I don't have that exact number.
But what about the driving records? Were substandard driving records or records that involve prior accidents or convictions for OUI or other things? Was any of that discovered during this review of those other 700 drivers, or did they all seem to be okay?
Yeah, so that is, I would say that is a continual ongoing work as part of TransDev's work with their workforce and as part of our ongoing extensive oversight of TransDev. We have a safety working group between BPS and TransDev that meets regularly, looks at accident frequency rates as well as individual driver metrics around driver safety. And since April 28th, an additional step that we took is, every single day, BPS Transportation and TransDev Safety Leadership have added a standing meeting where we together review all accidents and safety incidents that occurred over the prior day, what happened, and any follow-up steps, all of the follow-up steps that are being taken.
Can you say with confidence?
Can I say on this question, and please correct me if I'm wrong, my understanding is that in that first review, there were a small number of other drivers who were in the same kind of situation as the driver mentioned here, where training hours had been completed, but not paperwork had not been finalized. Is that correct?
Slightly. I think what happened was during that review, TransDev identified a number of drivers where there was uncertainty about their licenses and credentials in the files that TransDev was able to review over that very expedited timeline. And they immediately pulled those drivers off the road until they were able to do individual outreach and confirm that they in fact did have all of those drivers did have fully up-to-date credentials and license, but they just needed to make sure that the files were stored in the proper place and that everyone had the right access to them.
Got it. And even some of what our team experienced in going through that immediate audit with TransDev is confirmed in what the report has highlighted, that there was not a push of the button in one database where that was with 100% certainty available. And that is what we expect. That is what we need to uphold the terms of the contract, where TransDev does bear the responsibility for ensuring that certifications are accurate and up to date. But it's the right remedy when that happen when that does not happen is for us to be ensuring that it's happening in real time before anything might take place that would lead to a tragedy, not to point fingers or anything afterwards. Right? We are clear about what the contract says. We are clear about what responsibilities lie on the side of Boston Public Schools in the city and what is on TransDev. But at the end of the day, all of these pieces have to fit together to keep every single one of our students safe. No excuses of who is actually responsible for what in any given moment. And our systems have to be there to support confidence and certainty at any moment about all of these credentials and training and all of the components of safety being up to date.
Mayor Wood, on a slightly different topic, you said you wanted to do everything we can to make sure kids are safe on school buses. And back in January, the state legislature passed a new law enabling school districts to put automated enforcement cameras on school buses to try to deter and fine drivers who pass buses illegally when kids are getting on and off. And a lot of safety advocates all over the state are working with school districts to implement this as the school year begins. Has Boston passed the necessary legislation to enact this law, which is the first requirement, and then the second requirement is set for actually to get TransDev to install the cameras on the buses, or have we done any of those things?
We supported this legislation, and I firmly believe that any mechanisms to ensure that the speed limits are being followed and that road safety rules and laws are being followed are important, and that we could go even further with legislation that would allow for automated enforcement in places even beyond bus lanes and for our most vulnerable in terms of young students on the buses. I will defer to the team. I do not know. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that question. That is something that BPS Transportation has been very interested in for a number of years now. We've met with some of the other cities and vendors who have piloted this outside of Boston, and want to express appreciation to Councillor Pepin and some of the other members of the Boston City Council who advocated with the state to pass this legislation. We're continuing to work with them to make sure that Boston passes all of the necessary measures, and our team since the legislation passed last winter has been working cross-collaboratively with the other city departments needed to develop an RFP to get these cameras on our buses, and our goal is to pilot it this coming school year.
Oh, great.
Last question. The existing contract with TransDev and BPS says that a number of oversight rules that BPS has, including looking over safety and training of drivers. The report from Attorney Tidwell notes that BPS changed its approach to proceed TransDev from basically trust but verify towards the effect of more output than input. I was wondering, why did BPS decide to change its approach on issues like overseeing reviewing training records, overseeing accident reports, requesting those records, inspecting those records? And was that a mistake to change that approach?
So I'll start, and I know Dan has thinking on this. So in that first contract in which it was more direct management, we were heavily involved in every aspect to the point where it was not actually to the betterment of any of the output of what was happening. If you remember right, in 2020, the state, in addition to other areas, put us on a systemic improvement plan, transportation being one of them because of the poor performance of the vendor and the contract. The changes that we made were to really build in a lot more relative to financial incentives, to penalties, and to oversight when it comes to us working with TransDev as opposed to us managing TransDev. We have taken a number of steps, which I know Dan will share, in which that oversight has increased, and I believe that the report offers us the opportunity and really focuses on the areas such as the safety and the monitoring and the compliance that we really need to put focus on. So we appreciate that recommendation, but in that second contract, we've actually become stronger and stronger in our ability to be able to get better on-time performance and to manage the work that is ongoing with the contract as opposed to just doing that work. Dan, I know you have some examples too.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, I think that prior contract management structure described in the report from prior to 2020, which I think is probably most accurately characterized as micromanagement of the frontline TransDev employees. That was coming from the fact that the prior contract had no real incentives or accountability measures for TransDev leadership. And as the superintendent mentioned, that led to years of underperformance and ultimately the DESE intervention. With the 2023 contract, we intentionally looked to shift towards creating those incentives, creating accountability for TransDev leadership, and then putting in place extensive monthly performance reviews, monthly reporting package requirements, data access for BPS, and on-the-ground oversight of their work. And I think the report affirms that that approach has led to on-time performance and operational improvements over the last few years. And it highlights for us the need to extend that oversight really into the certifications, compliance, and licensing function, which we've already started.
I guess my question is though that
I just want to make sure, I know we're at time and the team is trying to keep us on time. This is an important topic and I think the superintendent is willing to create a little bit more space, but I want to make sure anyone who hasn't asked a question also gets, I think Eve, you had a question, so ask yours, John, and then we'll go to anyone else who did not ask a question if you want to add one. Yeah.
My follow-up question is that the Tidwell report says that BPS was not actively, regularly requesting and inspecting records of accident reports and training, for example, which is part of the monthly reporting package in the current contract. I'm wondering, was that a mistake? Should that have been done all along?
Yeah, I think what I would say is the report really highlights this specific area around licensing and credentials where we can and we need to, and we already have started to do more. And we're taking what I would say is, kind of that extensive oversight and contract management process that we have and making sure that going forward it includes really tight auditing, unannounced spot checks, on-site visits to make sure that the driver files and certifications are 100% up to date at all times and that we are taking accountability along with TransDev for making that happen.
Why not cancel the contract with TransDev? Or is the city looking into that? Is BPS looking into that at the end of these 5 years or even early?
I know the superintendent has thoughts on this. I mean, it is a quite complex arrangement here where we have an outside vendor and there are responsibilities that lie on both sides, and there's a collective bargaining agreement that is negotiated with the vendor and not directly with the city. And I think we see in districts across the Commonwealth, even in recent headlines, that some of the parameters around the huge complexities of delivering bus service are constrained by the conditions that we are under. Boston is one of the most complicated districts to serve by school bus because of all the various routes, the multiple runs that are needed, the fact that our bus service is not just serving Boston Public School students, but students who attend non-BPS schools as well, with different times that aren't aligned to the Boston Public Schools' own scheduled bell times. And so it is an incredibly complicated endeavor that the team has worked over recent years to really improve. And with new technology like the Zoom app that was introduced last school year and refined all throughout the year and now has shaped the new routes that students will be on a week from now, we have been able to make even more changes around efficiency, around safety, around connection to families. So parents, guardians, grandparents know exactly when their child is scheduled to arrive and to be there at the bus stop to pick them up and drop them off. When we issued the RFP a few years ago, there was only one bidder, and TransDev received that contract, which is active through 2028. So there's a larger question about the capacity of any operator to manage the contract as complicated and as large as the City of Boston's transportation contract. And we also have several years left on this term.
And what about Lens Josephs?
Do you want to add anything on the contract?
I think one other thing is again, with TransDev, they have our experience now over 2 contracts, but particularly in this last one since 2023, has been to commit to continual progress. And I think the sense that we have, every sense we have, is that the recommendations that this report is suggesting that we will adopt, that their intent is to do the same. That would signal to us that we have a contractor that is willing to change and to move with safety being the priority. To the mayor's point, our transportation is very complex, so much so that we actually, in the last bid, had 2 outside consultants that are experts in the transportation area come in and help us shape the bid. And even with that, we started with 4 that actually showed up, and only 1 actually submitted the bid. So, we for lots of different reasons, between the way that traffic patterns are, the number of students we have to transport, the number of entities of charter schools, parochial schools, our schools all start different end times, and the amount of students on IEPs with smaller buses. There's just an incredible complexity to our transportation system that in TransDev we have a partner that has stepped to the table to support and make the changes that we've asked where they've been able to. I think the work that lies ahead continues to be with TransDev at a deeper level, and this is to Dan's point that in terms of our own auditing and our own increase in making sure that we're doing things like spot checks, we're pushing on the recommendations such as the credentialing and access to data readily available, the monthly meetings, the daily meetings. I think it's going to be a combination of that, and then working really closely with our drivers union and TransDev in order to address the remaining recommendations.
And Lance Joseph's family, have you spoken with them about these recommendations?
Yes, I will always be connected to the Joseph family and continue to send our love, and am inspired by the incredible strength of a family who have said they are seeking justice for what happened, and they are determined that this will never happen again to another family. So we will always make sure, as the superintendent said, Lenz's life continues to have an impact every day. And I know my understanding of my job, and as the superintendent has said about everyone on our team, will be forever shaped by what has taken place. Anyone else? Good? You're under? Okay, last one, sorry, Jess. And then on topic, yeah?
Yes.
Okay.
Are there any other steps that you're taking to try to rebuild trust within the community?
I think, do you want to just talk about some of the changes from the summer communication?
Yeah, I think, this, our entire team took this to heart. This should never have happened. And, the report today is an important step, but it is not the first step. Immediately after this happened, our team began to, review what happened, review our operation, TransDev safety operation, and immediately started to make changes to make sure we are doing everything possible to ensure safety on our buses. And so that's, daily meetings between BPS and TransDev safety leadership. It's having BPS be an observer in every single accident review committee meeting that happens. And it's the steps that we've taken to increase the number of trainers and the level of supplemental training that drivers are receiving starting this summer. So we are, committed to continuing each of those things. And with the recommendations in this report, we're also committed to adopting each of these as decisively as possible. Safety is going to remain our top priority.
I just have one more thing on that.
I gotta cut you off, John. Sorry. We get
So the other thing is that we've been spending a lot of time with our school principals, with our family liaisons, with with everybody that really comes in contact with the families and the students directly to just talk about good safety practices, leaving school, walking, getting onto school bus, getting off school bus, streets, everything that we know is a collective picture across the city that happens every single day. We need as a village to continue to do that. We need our drivers to be aware around school buses that when they have their sign out, they stop, they adhere. Clearly we have a law now that's needed because sometimes that doesn't happen. So we really just need everybody focused on student safety at all levels. And so that's been well received. We had a small school bus at the Countdown to Kindergarten event, and it was filled constantly with kids wanting to get on it and off of it as their first experience as a kindergartner, as a preschooler. It's the more that we can get our students aware of what they can do for themselves as well and the adults around them, in addition to everything we can do relative to our transportation system, that at day's end is going to keep our kids safe and reassure our families the most.
Thank you.